I was elated.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I was on top of the world.
Man, that's amazing.
I was on top of the world because at the time I was 25 when I began.
25 years old as an adjunct professor, bro?
25.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Tech Woke Podcast. I'm your host, Chris. I'm a GRC specialist that works in the Govtech space. And in this podcast, we talk about cybersecurity, career, and life. And today's podcast, we have a great guest. His name is Brandon Moody. He has a master's in cybersecurity. He's an adjunct professor. He also has a CSSP. And without further ado, Brandon Moody, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you too. I remember when we weren't Baltimore Young Professionals event.
Yeah, Black Young Professionals.
Yeah. And I met you at this event, and I just saw this guy, and I'm like, he starts just getting into it, eyes wide, and I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy on the podcast. And then you was telling me your experience. I did pen testing, cyber threat hunt. You're a professor. I was like, I gotta get him on no matter what. So, we had some mishaps, but overall, I'm just glad to have you on, brother.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So how's your Saturday going?
So far, so good. Traffic was a little worse than I expected, but I'm here, blessed, ready to go.
I got you, man. You didn't get no workout in. I know you be jogging.
Yeah. A little bit of everything, right? So I run a lot. Actually, my run club, we had a run from Michael Myers themed run just yesterday.
So just dressed up like
so everybody came in costumes, and Michael Myers essentially chased us over the course of 3 miles.
Oh, for real?
If you escape, you escape. If you don't, you get silly string. But we had a great turnout, and I wasn't able to get a workout in today, but yeah, tomorrow we'll be back at it.
I got you. Can you just what's the name of the run group?
Block Blazers Run Club.
Oh, okay. So just check it out if y'all trying to go with Brandon. Y'all in the Baltimore area.
Yeah.
So Brandon, tell me about like high school. Like, was you always into tech? Like, explain your experience.
So, surprisingly enough, the very first computer science course was offered my senior year, the last semester, the final semester of my time in high school. Right. So, I had taken a computer science class, and honestly, it just felt intuitive, right? The logic, right? When you think of computer science and you think of, other similar disciplines, there's a lot of logic that goes into programming, for example. And I tend to think of myself as a logical person. So when I took the computer science class, and I think there were a couple of people that had similar sentiments in the class, but for me, it was simple, right? The coding piece was simple. So I started, there again, my last year in high school, and that transitioned right into college.
I got you. So what were you learning in this class? Like, were you learning, tell me about some of the coding and things you were doing.
So I think we worked exclusively with Python.
Oh, okay. That's amazing.
Yep.
In high school?
High school, Python. Man. But Python is actually designed to be intuitive, right? It's designed to be a little easier to learn than some of the other programming languages. But, there's some skill required in, kind of remembering the syntax and kind of adhering to the structure of the code, etc. But Python was where I started, and now I teach Python. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Hello world. Yep. So you just mesmerized by it, and so after high school, what did you do? You went to college? You went to Towson, right?
Yep, went to Towson University, and honestly, I think for the first couple of weeks I wasn't sure what I would major in, but I thought back to my E's and Python programming and the computer science class I had taken in high school. So I was considering, computer science as a major. There's a couple other majors I considered at the time as well, but I decided on computer science. And as I started to take the first couple of classes, introductory classes that were offered at the university, I realized that it's kind of easy. Right?
You're one of the first people that have told me, it was easy. Like, because the coding, calculus. So that means you was made for this.
I always tell people that I feel like in some respect, it kind of fell into my lap, right? It kind of fell into my lap. I didn't know, I wasn't fully aware of computer science as a major, as a discipline, as a profession. But, being introduced, being exposed to my very first class, it kind of, in high school, it took off from there. So as I mentioned, in high school, in college, those first couple of classes, it felt simple enough, right? Things did get a little bit more difficult as we transitioned into like the upper level classes as a junior, as a senior. But for the most part, I remember even as a freshman, as a sophomore, I would write out fully functioning code on the exams, right? So and there's a term called pseudocode, which is false code. The exams might ask you to write out pseudocode, which essentially says this should do this, right? But you don't have to actually write out the code itself. I think at the time I was so in tune with programming that I was just writing out fully functioning code. Like had you copied and pasted it from my paper, it would compile, it would run. Okay. It would run, yeah.
Because I do know with coding, you make one mistake, it's over.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like what did you did you do any internships while you was in college?
I did, right? And that actually ties into my transition kind of away from computer science as my major to introducing cybersecurity as my minor, right? So my heavy focus was computer science in my freshman and sophomore year, but I had a very amazing advisor at the time who suggested and kind of saw my skill in computer science, suggested that I transition or at least attempt, a cybersecurity class, and I did. I think our main motivation was recognizing that, I was working full time, working overnight while I was in undergraduate. It was tough, right? Going to school full time, working full time. Didn't have a lot of time for anything else. I mean, I would be falling asleep in class sometimes, but that was recognized. I still did great in class, but my advisor had recognized it. And there was a program called Cybercore that was offered at Towson University. And I think a number of other universities around the country offer it as well. But this Cybercore program, it almost felt like signing a contract for like the NFL.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. Because in this program, right, they give you a stipend. So up to like $25,000.
Oh.
Yeah, $25,000 a year. Right, so they were just paying you out. You get a check every week or every 2 weeks. I think it was every week, approximately $1,000 every week, and they would pay for room, board, tuition, conferences, certifications, etc. So the full package was worth maybe about $60,000-ish.
That's amazing.
A year.
They still have this program?
They do.
Okay.
Yep. Cybercore, I think it's hosted by NSF, the National Science Foundation. It's called Scholarship for Service.
And explain like what other things that Cybercore did.
So in addition to that, or the caveat to getting all the money and getting all of the benefits of being in this program, is a very selective program. You have to go through a number of interviews, and typically like the top cybersecurity talent at institutions or universities are kind of offered the opportunity to participate, but in return, right, because you don't get things for
give something.
Yeah, you have to give something, and in return you have to work or promise to work for federal, state, local, or tribal government, for the number of years that you receive the scholarship. So for myself, I received it for 2 years, so I was responsible for working, in some capacity for government for 2 years following graduation.
Oh, okay. Do they help you with that?
Yeah, and that is where I got my first kind of experience, with navigating the interview process at federal agencies and federal entities and other state and tribal entities as well, because they would host, I think, 2 job fairs a year, actually here in DC, right, where they would bring in every federal agency. So you think of, DHS and CIA, FBI, everybody was there, right? DOD was there, Department of Navy was there, Department of Energy, Health and Human Services. Literally every component of the federal space was represented in this job fair. And our job was to interact and interface with these agencies. And we essentially had on-the-spot interviews with, all of these different agencies. So you would come equipped with, 100 resumes, and you kind of parlay and politic over a number of hours and hope that, your relationship or your interview, your discussions with, one of their personnel went well enough that you would be offered an internship or some sort of role.
So they kind of prepare you what is the process of getting hired to an agency like this? Like, is it resumes, networking? Break that down to me.
So I can speak to, in the federal sphere, traditionally people interview or they apply to usajobs.com, but over the years, I think the selection process has changed a little bit. In 2022, if I'm not mistaken, Executive Order 13932 doesn't probably have any immediate, impact to anybody. But if you were to look into that executive order, you would realize that it actually calls for more skills-based hiring versus having more, the paper-based. Do you have a degree in this? Do you have a degree in that? It shifts that emphasis from, what do you have to what can you actually perform? What can you demonstrate as an individual?
And I like that a little bit more because I love college. There's nothing wrong with college, but I think in our field, that it's more skills based. So what do you think on that? What do you think about college versus not having a degree? What's your thoughts on that?
So I hear this topic all the time. People ask about the more formalized college education experience, vice the certification and more self-study route. And I'll argue that I've seen, as it relates to the federal government, there's been a major shift in how agencies are interacting and selecting individuals to participate or to bring on board. In the past, there may have been a higher emphasis on having the degree. Do you have this degree? But I've seen over the years with the advent of a number of cybersecurity boot camps, IT boot camps, right? People and organizations are a little bit more amenable to individuals that have non-traditional routes to cyber and IT.
No, okay, I got you. Okay, so we're gonna go back to that networking event. So that's where is that where you got your first job, or?
That is actually not where I got my first job. So it was for me to transition to cybersecurity, much like for many individuals that are either transitioning to cybersecurity or picking it up for the first time. It can be difficult to learn. Granted, I did well in my classes. I was accepted into the program, but just grasping, cybersecurity and not really understanding the full breadth of cybersecurity, was a little tough for myself. I didn't realize that there were so many niche areas in cybersecurity as a field, right? I just thought, okay, cybersecurity, I'll just do cybersecurity as a generalist. But the whole idea is that cybersecurity isn't really to be done as a generalist. You want to find something that you specialize in, something that you want to focus in order to kind of develop your skill set.
Yeah, because I'm Nigerian. So overseas, they become doctors. And they say, I do everything. No, you can't do everything. You got to specifically do one thing. Yep. Like whether it's digital forensics, GRC. But I know later in your story you pretty much did everything. But
I've done a lot. But kind of doubling back to that story is, in those job fairs, unfortunately, I wasn't successful. I was able to get my resume out to a number of different entities, and I did, have some further conversations with some of the entities as well. But none of them really shook out until my senior year, right? So I actually didn't immediately transition into a full-time role. I transitioned into an internship.
Oh, okay.
So I pursued internships in my junior and senior year, because I felt like that would not only help the transition into a full-time role, but it would also check the box for getting my foot into the door for the federal space. So I started an internship, federal entity working in the Office of Inspector General, and that internship, after 6 months, transitioned into a full time role as I graduated from.
That's amazing, from college, right?
Yep, as I graduated from college.
Man, that's amazing, because I'm pretty sure you got your clearance and everything.
Yeah, actually, in my first role, and not a lot of people know this distinction, but there's something called public trust, and public trust is essentially the same level of clearance, and I use that in quotes and use that term loosely, but it's the same level of clearance that police officers, etc., local police officers would have. It's not technically a clearance. So in my first role, I didn't technically have a clearance. I just had a high risk public trust. But in my new role that I transitioned into approximately 2 to 3 years ago, I now have and maintain a clearance, a very, very high clearance that does require, polys and, counterintelligence and a whole bunch of other things.
Can you explain the importance of having a clearance?
Oh, yeah.
And just some of the clearance types.
Yeah, so you have a secret clearance, and just kind of speaking to the hierarchy of clearances that are offered within the federal space, you have a secret clearance, you have a top secret clearance, you have typically what people call TS-SCI, which is a top secret clearance that's coupled with a secret compartmentalized information kind of addition, and then you have Q clearances. Q clearances are essentially TS clearances that have nuclear as well, so you get access to certain nuclear things, nuclear technologies, and then beyond that, more lesser known clearances include Yankee White. Those are clearances that are required for individuals that work directly with the president or work around the White House.
Okay. And can you explain so to the woke community, that's what I call my audience.
Yeah.
Can you explain the benefits of internships in general?
Oh yeah. Internships help you to gather not only that introductory and foundational experience, but you can also leverage your internship in landing your first role. If you were to perform well in your internship, you're already at the entity. You can say, nudge nudge, wink wink. How does my outlook or what does the perspective look like for me to transition into a full-time role? I think landing an internship, that's a separate conversation. You absolutely want to, pursue internships because they very, very easily and they can very quickly turn into full-time roles. But, landing an internship is have to be deliberate. It's a little bit more intricate, right? Because internships has a lot of openings, but there's also a lot of people that apply to those internships. So you have to be deliberate in how you write your resumes. You have to be deliberate in the experience that you gain, recognizing that for many people, you may not have that professional experience. So you'll look to your educational experience to land that internship. So what I typically recommend to people, because in my last role, I was responsible for the hiring of junior level professionals and junior cybersecurity folk. In reviewing thousands of resumes, what stood out to me the most was the people that essentially there was clear indication that they, I want to say, were interested in outside projects because many of them, again, they didn't have professional experience. Like, well, what makes you stand out? Did you set up a home lab? Did you leverage resources like Hack the Box or any of the other resources out there in order to pursue the knowledge? How well or how much have you pursued this knowledge vice, you just having this knowledge? How teachable are you? How willing to learn are you? And do you maintain what I call a cybersecurity mindset?
No, I agree because even with me, when I was getting to the field, I just got my degree. I didn't know how to do nothing. So when I started learning these skills, like doing Hack the Box, when I started doing projects and putting it on LinkedIn, that's when I got a job. So I agree with you 100% on that.
Yep. And that's where, that's where I've seen, that's how I've seen things shake out in my own experiences. Those are the resumes that I've looked at in the past. And that's essentially how I landed my first role because I didn't have the professional experience when I first started, right? It was strictly, I went to college, I majored in computer science. I had a minor in computer security because I don't think they had a fully fleshed out cybersecurity program at the time. Cybersecurity, when I was in undergrad, wasn't really recognized as a major, right? Yeah. It's something that's kind of new. So I only had the educational experience. So what I did was in my resume, I just kind of highlighted that experience. So in this class, I worked on this lab and I was introduced to these tools. I was introduced to these technologies. I was introduced to these different methodologies, right? And I listed that out. So going into a role, they would know, okay, he already has knowledge of and or interest in these number of tools, these number of techniques, etc.
Okay, so talk about like your transition into the field, your first job, and just kind of highlight some of the things you've done in your career.
So I mentioned this earlier, but my first role, I worked for Office of Inspector General, Department of Health and Human Services. But in that first role, they have a cybersecurity and IT audit division. So I was responsible, and I was a member of that cybersecurity audit team. So in that role, I started off as a junior member, and eventually, before I departed the organization, I was a senior cybersecurity auditor. But we were essentially charged with visiting the operating divisions under HHS. And granted, I know a lot of you may think, well, what is an operating division? So if you've ever heard of FDA or the CDC, these are all operating divisions that fall under the Department of Health and Human Services at a federal level. So we would go out to CDC, we would go out to FDA and some of the lesser known ones like SAMHSA, HRSA, et cetera. And we would do cybersecurity audits, right? And that typically would manifest as conducting penetration tests, or indicators of compromise assessments and cyber threat hunts, etc. And in my role, I was responsible for learning those tools, techniques, and skill sets that are required for me to successfully complete those audits.
Yeah, because usually when people says audits, the GRC, they think about like testing controls.
Yep.
But you're actually going into the system and auditing a system, like meaning like you're doing the pen, like a red team assessment, things like that. So that's amazing.
Yep.
What are some of the issues you have as a new person in the field?
It was a learning curve, right? That was a learning curve. So recognizing that, as a individual that just came from college, transitioned from an internship to a full-time role, and the responsibilities associated with that role, having to know penetration testing, indicators of compromise assessment, cyber threat hunts, etc. Just recognizing that there was a learning curve and being graceful, with myself and recognizing that I don't know it all today, but I may learn it all tomorrow. So in order to, our team wasn't wholly made up of federal employees, right? We were augmented by a team of contractors as well, government contractors who had years and years of experience performing that type of work. So they augmented our team. So I made it a personal challenge of myself to kind of pick their brains, right? What can I learn? What can I learn from this individual that has been doing it for, 5 or 10 years, 20 years, et cetera? So just kind of over the shoulder, on the job type training was one of my primary foci, I think, in that role.
Did you have mentors?
So I would consider my supervisor at the time was largely my mentor.
Understood.
Right. He had onboarded me, and he helped me navigate, those first series of audits, and he was always there, giving tidbits of information to how I could improve, and different certifications that could be valuable to myself as I moved up the chain again from a junior level to a senior level auditor. But he also helped me in my transition to the teaching world as well. So it was he that first recognized that I had a skill set, not only in cybersecurity, but in presentations, right, and public speaking. And he suggested that I take that skill set, and he had observed that there was an opening at one of the local community colleges for a cybersecurity staff member. And immediately after I finished undergrad, I took maybe a 6-month break, and I pursued my master's degree, and I was able to finish and wrap up my master's in approximately a year and a half. So
that's elite.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go into you got your master's. We're gonna go into your professor and things like that. But I just want to highlight a couple more things. Can you just explain to the tech world community what the importance of having a mentor like in this space? Just
extremely important. Especially as you navigate early on in the process, understanding cybersecurity as a field. Many people, such as myself, when I first started, we saw the general cybersecurity. We saw cybersecurity as a generalist, not recognizing that you have to essentially be a specialist, right? Choose a field, choose a niche area of cybersecurity and pursue that, right? It's better to be a master of a single skill than to be what many people would consider a jack of all trades, right? So you find that being a master or being a subject matter expert in a particular area it's a little bit better than being a generalist. And much of that comes with the direction of having a mentor who can plug you into different opportunities that may exist. They can give you insight or additional information related to gaps that may exist in your educational or professional experience. They could offer up, insight into certifications that could be useful. But I mean, it's an invaluable resource.
So Brandon, can you explain the importance of networking at your job?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially in modern times, recognizing that for cybersecurity professionals, IT professionals and related disciplines, we don't very often, you don't see as many people sticking to a particular job or role or function for a long time, right? There's a lot of transition that occurs in the cybersecurity field, or there's a lot more transition that occurs in cybersecurity jobs and roles nowadays than there was in the past. So in networking with your coworkers, not only do you extend your community, right, you also develop relationships with other cybersecurity, individuals and minds. And in that, you could leverage those relationships for future opportunities, right? So if in some people, in some cases, you may not be able to leverage them for another like job role or position, but maybe you reach back and say, hey, I'm working on this particular project. I know you have experience or expertise in this project, and it's something that I'm now, being faced with. Do you think that, or could you give me some insight into how you would navigate this, or what are some tools or techniques that you leverage? And in expanding your network, you'll realize that over time you have access to subject matter experts within any project that you'll encounter, and you'll start to have individuals that, hey, there's a job opening for this particular role, right? There's an opening for this, or there's an opportunity for that. And as you expand your network more and more, and it'll start, with your immediate network at your job, but you'll find that again over time you have access to a whole bunch of people who can provide, insights, who can provide opportunities, outside of what you're capable of yourself.
Yeah, because like working in the government, networking is what gets you in that position 9 times out of 10. They can push a job to USA job, but in my experience, they 9 times out of 10 know who's going to fill that role ahead of time. Just from, and if you're doing what you got to do, then you're going to fill that role pretty quick.
Yep.
Can you explain like certifications versus experience? What's your opinion on that?
I think they go hand in hand. Like ultimately, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself to only having certifications. You don't want to walk in the door and say, hey, I have my Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus, CISSP, CISM, etc. It's like, well, what have you done? Do you have any professional experience?
That's facts.
They call people like that paper tigers. Yeah. Like on paper. In participating in a number of interviews in my last role, I think I've run across a number of paper tigers where it's like their name and then you have like 50 certifications that follow it. But if you would have asked them foundational questions or asked them to kind of navigate, a certain scenario, they don't have that same. They don't necessarily have the same level of understanding that you would expect from an individual with that number of certifications. So ideally, you want to pursue the certifications because in some cases, organizations will look and say, hey, if you have this certification, you have a priority, right, as far as hiring, or you have preference as far as hiring. But you want to couple that with, if not professional experience, outside experience, right? Have you set up a home network? Have you done or, pursued projects in your own time that could help fill that gap? From what you were not able to gain professionally, right, to bolster your educational knowledge.
Nah, I agree. Paper tigers is a good one. Somebody got to trade because I was talking to this. I was trying to recommend somebody for a current position I have now. So I called them and I was like, talking to them about like GRC, and I asked them on there. I said, have you ever used EMAS? Yeah, I used it in the past for 3 years. I was like, okay, how do you test and control EMAS? He just said something. I was like, what are you talking about, bro? And then I asked him another question. I said, can you explain a FedRAMP assessment? And he's like, I never worked.
What's FedRAMP?
Yeah, so I just got on. I said, listen, brother, keep in contact, but you're not for this role, bro. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I know, bro. It's crazy. Like, you actually ask people, does the government value certifications?
The government does place some value on certifications, for sure. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of organizations will kind of see certifications as, this person will have priority because of obtaining this certification. But there has been a larger influence or larger intent to look at skills-based hiring over the years, vice having a paper certification or having a paper degree.
Oh, okay. I got you. Can you kind of explain, because I'm kind of confused too, like kind of like how the GS levels work?
Yeah.
What do you know about the GS schedules?
So GS is general schedule, and it essentially outlines the pay for federal employees across a number of different what they call localities. Mm-hmm. So you have a number of localities that are distributed around the United States, but they take this GS level, and the GS level maps directly to a base salary, and they use that base salary in combination with your locality to determine essentially your gross salary. Right, so you have GS1. It starts at 1 and it goes up to a maximum of 15. Most, I'll say, entry-level roles for IT, cybersecurity, as you transition into the federal space, they're typically graded at GS7 and or GS9. I think GS7 is aligned with a bachelor's degree, and GS9 is aligned with a master's degree, and GS11 is aligned with a PhD.
Yeah, but they don't value them as much no more. It's just about skills.
So. Yeah, yep. So there's a much higher emphasis on skills-based hiring. And in those general schedules, the GS, there's a lot of opportunity, especially within cybersecurity and IT roles, for you to be promoted, up the GS ladder. I know in my first role, I started as a GS7, but I was on a career ladder. So essentially, after successful completion and successfully or satisfactorily meeting my job roles and requirements each year, I would see a promotion.
Well, that's amazing. And I hear like things online saying like when you get a government position, it's hard to fire people from that. Is that true? Because I've seen a lot of people get fired real quick. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Just tell me your thoughts.
It is possible, right? You're not like locked into it. You're not invulnerable to being removed from a position. But I will say they have a number of programs that can kind of assist or aid you in preventing problems or mitigating issues that could lead to, removal from a role. For example, if you're going through like a mental health thing that is kind of inhibiting your ability to successfully complete your role. They have a number of different programs that can help with mental health. They have programs that can align and kind of assist with many things that happen generally with life, right? So these programs aid and assist in kind of mitigating the reasons why I guess an individual is to be removed from a particular role.
So so it's possible you can get fired, right?
Yeah, it is possible. Especially during that first year as a federal employee, you're in what's called a probationary period. And during that time, if they find that you're not satisfactorily meeting your job role, function, etc., there is like an expedited process for removal from that position.
Okay. As a black man in this field, can you explain to me some of the trials and tribulations you've been in this field?
Yeah. With that, recognizing that I think that there's a lot of organizations that have turned to DEIA, so diversity, equity, inclusivity, and accessibility in recent years, especially in the turn of the COVID pandemic. I'm sorry, but as a African American man in cyber, I recognize that there's not as much diversity as a lot of organizations would like, within these different entities. I haven't seen a vast amount of African American men, or really speaking to all diversity. There hasn't been a ton of diversity outside of, the general archetype of cybersecurity professionals, which is white male, right? So I won't say it's extremely rare to come across, black male or otherwise, but it is a little more sparse. I'll say that.
Okay, sparse. Okay, got you. All right, Brandon, can you explain to me how you transitioned to a college professor?
So what initially began as my internship and eventually transitioned into a full-time role, in my first gig in professional world of cybersecurity, I was introduced to my then supervisor, who would become essentially like my mentor, help guiding me not only through that role and position, but helping me to navigate cybersecurity, in general. But after I finished my master's degree back in 2017, approximately 2018, so I finished my master's at the bottom of 2017. In 2018, towards mid to end 2018, I had a conversation with my then supervisor, who mentioned that there was an opening. There was a local community college that was looking for cybersecurity expertise for individuals who not only had the educational experience, but also had real world professional experience that they can impart and share, with the students as they kind of learned up in cybersecurity. So he pointed out the opening, and then I pursued it. Right. Okay. And I would argue that was probably the most intimidating interview process.
Out of everything
I've done, interviewing to be an adjunct professor is probably the most intimidating thing, because very similarly to a traditional role, right, you have your typical job interview process where they ask you the questions and they kind of determine your knowledge and experience, your expertise. But they also have, many people may not be aware of, teaching demonstration. So you have to give essentially a lecture a room full of professors.
And that's intimidating, bro.
So that is where the intimidation piece comes into play, right? Because I know over the years, starting off in elementary school and transitioning to middle school, high school, right? We have opportunities where we have to give presentations to our peers, to our class, to our teachers, etc. And that can be intimidating. But think of that to the level of your audience are all subject matter experts, professors, PhDs who've been doing this for 10, 20, 30-ish plus years. So it's very intimidating to try to teach a certain subject to a group of individuals, an audience of individuals who have mastered said subject.
Yeah, and then is this a testament to you that your knowledge that was able to impress them that are all subject matter experts in cybersecurity? So after that, I know you knew you was official. Yeah.
They let me know they were excited. For my teaching demonstration, they were excited afterwards, and they shared the news of me landing a role, shortly thereafter. So,
how did you feel after that, though?
I was elated.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I was on top of the world.
Man, that's amazing.
I was on top of the world because at the time I was 25 when I began.
25 years old as an adjunct professor, bro.
25.
Dang.
25. So a number of years ago, and I remember my first class, the students thought that I was a student. Like
the girls in the class probably like, let me get at you, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just joking around. But
that was one of the things that they told me to specifically look out for. Coming in the university at my age, recognizing that I was very close in age to a lot of the students. They pointed out once, twice, 3 times. They're like, hey, just be mindful of professional relationships and everything else. And that was something I did keep in mind as I navigated all of the classes that I taught from there after as well.
That's amazing. And you taught at a college, so you taught at there, and did you teach at any universities? And
absolutely, right. So I began my teaching journey. Actually, I began my teaching journey as a math tutor years and years ago in high school. But for the cybersecurity discipline, that began in 2018 at Howard Community College, and from there I transitioned to my alma mater,
Towson.
Towson.
That's a prestigious school to become a professor at.
It is, and it's a great university, especially for computers and information sciences and all related disciplines, cybersecurity included. So I went back to teach at Towson University, and from there I transitioned and kind of got into contact with another organization that has hooks into a number of universities, and through that I was able to teach at New York University, New Jersey.
Oh, you talking New York?
New York University.
Oh man.
Yep, they have these boot camps, and I was the instructor, the professor for those boot camps.
Oh, that's amazing, bro. You killing it. Are you going to eventually get your doctorate's degree to teach?
That's on the horizon. That's absolutely on the horizon. But with all of the moving pieces of life and then navigating cyber, not only working full time in cyber, but teaching in cyber and having a cybersecurity consulting firm. Right now, I don't have the most cycles, the most space to pursue it, but it's definitely on the horizon.
Okay, so what is one thing you notice about students when you're teaching them cybersecurity? What are some of the issues they're having?
So I think there's a number of different directions that I want to go here, but
say whatever on your mind. We got time.
So there's a trial and error piece that comes with cybersecurity, especially from a technical perspective. So as you're being introduced to all these different technologies, tools, techniques, etc., I think what's more important than being taught or being edified about these different subjects is getting some hands-on experience. So whether that hands-on experience comes from you pursuing outside projects or from ordained lab environments that are produced by the entity that you're receiving the education from, I think that's where a lot of the gaps currently are. A lot of students find value in that hands-on experience. So it's like, I don't want to say never mind the lecture piece of it, because they have the opportunity to navigate the lecture slides themselves. The material, the content, the information is there. But I think what might be more valuable is these are pointing out, these are the tools, technologies, techniques that you'll need to know as you transition into the professional world. And this is what that will look like, right? If you want to, for example, pursue like forensics, right? Or to pursue incident response, it's like you have to know about log aggregators. You have to know about tools like Splunk, right? And our job as educators, or my job as an educator, what I try to really share with the students and impart upon them is that if you need to know Splunk, let me introduce you to Splunk right now, right? Get some hands-on keys experience using Splunk. So as you transition, it's like, this isn't something that's completely foreign to me, right? And I already have hands-on experience on how to use these different tools, these products, etc. So I will argue that the hands-on keys experience and actually showing the students what they'll be challenged to accomplish on a day-to-day is a lot more valuable than this is TCP and this is this protocol and this is
anybody can teach that, man.
Yeah. I mean, they could, with all the different resources out there, right? And it's, especially you giving them the lecture content, or they have the slides, they can look at that themselves. But I think helping them to navigate the more technical hands-on pieces is a lot more valuable to them than just this is the content.
Because even with the Security Plus, there's some boot camps, they literally just go through slides. They don't teach them anything. And I'm pretty sure when you talk about Splunk, you pretty much show them on yourself. You pretty much...
I don't just show them, right? In the educational capacity that I'm teaching right now, they have a lab environment that they use, and every individual has access to this lab environment through a web app or through a web browser. So they can, as we talk about Splunk, right? Splunk is there as we talk about tools like Wireshark. And you all, if you have interest in like,
I love Wireshark.
Yep, Wireshark, right? Wireshark will be brought up right in the lab environment. There'll be a number of tasks that they're challenged to complete, right? And if they can complete it, they have you as a resource, myself as a resource, as an educator to say, hey, I've had this problem with Wireshark. How do I navigate solving this problem? And how might this manifest in the professional world?
And that's an amazing program that Towson University has, because some programs don't do that. They just go through everything. Or the professor, unlike yourself, they don't have to go to a room of people and present something. They're just bring them on and they're just talking about something the whole time. And they're taking quizzes. So I shout out to Towson University.
And a number of other universities implement that as well. I think the organization that produces the boot camps that I'm charged to instruct, they have hooks into, again, a number of different universities around the United States. I mentioned New York University, but they also partner with, and I've taught at New Jersey Institute of Technology. I've taught at University of Florida, University of Central Florida, so UCF and UF respectively. I've also taught at University of Wisconsin.
You've been everywhere, bro.
Yeah.
I didn't know all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Amazing you brought it up. In this generation, I noticed with kids, they're a little bit lazy. They want to get a certification and don't do no work and just pass on. What do you say about people that wants to get in this field without doing anything?
You have to develop what I call a cybersecurity mindset, right? So to really be successful in cybersecurity, granted, certifications can perhaps land you an entry-level role or position if you target an organization that has an emphasis on that, but You'll notice that over time you have to maintain and leverage a cybersecurity mindset for ongoing success in a particular role, right? Or ongoing success in your career, right? And when I say cybersecurity mindset, you have to be first cognizant that things change every day, right? There's new tools being introduced every day. There's new techniques being introduced every day. There's new breaches, right? Speaking specifically to cybersecurity, right? There's new patches and updates to help to resolve and mitigate those breaches. So there's a lot of information, right? Every single day as it relates to cyber, you have to be aware of that information and you have to know how to apply that information. And all that is coupled into what I call the cybersecurity mindset, right? So it's like the gathering of information, staying up to date on everything, whether you're getting that from different blog resources or you're getting it from threat feeds, etc. Aggregating that information, knowing how it applies to your job role or function, and knowing how it may change the landscape for your particular role.
Yeah, because even me, I'm getting more lax, and I have to reinvigorate myself. I'm learning AI, just trying to. And how do you feel about AI in this field? What's your thoughts on it? Do you think it's ready now, or do you think that people should start learning now?
I recently actually had an opportunity to visit the world's fastest computer in support of AI. It's a system called Aurora, and I think it's...
Oh, you actually got a chance to...
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yep. I was at Argonne National Lab recently, and I put eyeballs on that system in support of artificial intelligence, etc. But my take on artificial intelligence is that we've seen over the years, in the past couple of years, an uptick in the use of artificial intelligence and the introduction of a number of additional LLMs. And LLM is just a large language model that kind of power the AI technologies that we interface with. Think ChatGPT, think Cortana, and all of these other. I know Apple, like newer iPhones,
Siri.
they have Siri. They have all these different AI integrations built into them. But I think that it changes everything, especially from an educational standpoint. Sometimes I get like responses to homeworks and discussion board posts, and it's kind of easy to tell.
Crazy. You can tell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it's easy to tell, right?
Like, Billy didn't write that.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be easy to tell, just kind of depending upon your relationship and your understanding of individual students. But there are some technologies that can detect at some level, use of different artificial intelligence technologies, the ChatGPTs, etc. But I think it makes a lot of things easier. But with that, there's a lot of caution that has to be introduced, especially from an educational standpoint, from a professional standpoint, right? If you use artificial intelligence to like generate works that are not essentially, it's not essentially yours, and you're passing it off as being original thought or original art. I know there's been a lot of discussion about AI generated art, etc. But I think there's a lot of gray area when it comes to that. People claiming that as this is original by myself. It's like
But like, say like in cybersecurity space, like there, like in cybersecurity space, AI, they don't really have the proper, what's that word, management of the cybersecurity of that. Do you think that will be a new field that people should want to focus on, or do you think that is a field?
It's a growing field, and in the sphere of cybersecurity, I know at least within my organization, they've limited use of different AI technologies. For example, I can't go directly to ChatGPT. I can't use ChatGPT on my organizationally furnished equipment. Right? They limit access to AI. I think until they can kind of handle and get a feel for how AI will fit within our organization.
Okay, I got you. Okay. So you did all this stuff. So now you're working on your own business. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, alongside a number of other great cybersecurity minds, we co-founded an organization called GAW Solutions. That is GAW, also known as Geniuses at Work. But we provide cybersecurity educational services. We provide consulting services. We act as subject matter experts in a number of different realms of cybersecurity, inclusive of education, inclusive of cloud technologies, inclusive of penetration testing, and blue team. And when I say blue team, I'm speaking to more defensive focused cybersecurity. So we specialize in a number of areas, and we actually we service a bunch of people, right? We service a bunch of people primarily right now in more consulting gigs. Individuals will reach out for how best to navigate cybersecurity, or they want a bit additional insight into this particular technology or this particular tool, and they'll reach out to us, and the geniuses will get right on it.
Back to your business, do you help other people get into the cybersecurity or educate them and get into space like newcomers?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a webinar, I want to say approximately a month and a half ago, that was targeted towards those individuals that are newer to cybersecurity or transitioning professionals that had interest in cybersecurity. So it was geared towards those newcomers, and it kind of laid the foundation into what cybersecurity is as a field, the different areas of cybersecurity, and some programs and some resources that they can leverage, and kind of taking up cybersecurity as a discipline.
Yeah, and I really respected you. You did so much for other businesses. I'm glad that you're doing your own thing, and I'm glad that you're bringing it, helping so many people. I didn't even know, even from me talking to you, I'm kind of glad I didn't get all the in-depth of what you do, because everything is just mind-blowing to me about how good are you in this field, dude.
Yeah.
And you're killing it. Where can they find your business at?
GAW Solutions, right? Follow us on Instagram. I think we have Facebook and other typical social media platforms as well. You can follow us at GAW Solutions.
And also tell me, like, what are your plans for the next 5 years?
Next 5 years. I think within the next 5 years, I'll absolutely pursue that PhD. Unsure if it'll be complete within that time, but it'll absolutely be started. So that PhD will be pursued. My hope is that my business will be a lot larger than what it is. Maybe we can service some outside entities in that consulting role. Just kind of growing in that space. I'll absolutely continue to be an educator because I find passion. That's one of my passions. Helping people navigate cybersecurity and kind of jumping over some of the hurdles that I face in my my early years, transitioning into cyber. Giving them that very early insight into what they can expect on a day-to-day, within their role in cyber as well. So I'll continue to be an educator. Hopefully the business will be a little bit bigger. And as far as my full-time role in cyber, hopefully I can continue in that as well. But if the business gets large enough, right? Let's say I'm able to.
It will.
Yeah. God willing, right? We get to that level, then it'll perhaps be a conversation about transitioning to doing full-time self-employment.
Amazing. Where can the audience find you?
Again, GAW Solutions. Follow us on all of the major social media platforms, and follow my run club as well, right?
Okay.
Black Blazers Run Club.
And check him out. He's pretty fit.
Yeah.
What's one last thing you want to leave the audience with?
Just some life advice, actually. I would say, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you find discipline in any particular area of your life and you have interest in cybersecurity, tech related disciplines, take that similar discipline and apply it to cyber, apply it to tech, and you'll find yourself extremely successful and really in anything that you do. So
yeah, that hit me. How you do anything is how you do everything. And if you don't do it, if you do it crazy, then it's not going to be the best outcome. So I just want to tell you, Brandon, thank you. It was an honor having you on the podcast. You did a great job. I definitely want to have you again in the future at some point. Got to let it breathe a little bit, though.
Yeah.
But I just want to dap you up. Thank you for having you on. And to the audience, to the Tech Woke community, thank you for watching this podcast. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to like the video. Write in the comments down below. Share the video. Also join the newsletter. And I got some clothing coming out. It should be in there. Tech Woke clothing. So check it out and support the channel. And also check on the Patreon, the newsletter, everything like that. And remember, everybody, get 1% better every day. Peace out, everybody. I'll see you on the next one.